the principal and the University of Edinburgh, I'm very grateful for this honor. It's lovely to be here in this space that is hallowed, and to come after so many distinguished people. I feel very fortunate to be included among the people who have been honored with an honorary degree from this university. So when I was thinking about what to talk about, I was told that one of the things that might be useful would be to talk about the lessons that I've learned in my writing life and my speaking. And I also wanted to say something about, thank you so much, Dr. Bompani, for your 4 suggestions. And listening to you reminded me that of the Swedish students who were sent a copy of my book, and it reminded me of how sorry I felt for those poor kids, because now they have to read what I wrote. I mean, I can imagine what it must be like. But anyway, I was very happy about that. So in thinking about the lessons that I've learned, I thought, I'm not sure that I feel equipped to talk about them. So instead, I wanted to talk about the kind of world that I dream about, and to talk about it in terms of suddenly becoming this feminist figure in the world, which I really never intended to become. Writing is the thing that I love. Writing is my first love. Fiction is my first love. Fiction is the thing that brings me the greatest joy when it's going well, which doesn't happen as often as I would like. But when it does happen, it's the thing that gives me the greatest joy. I feel transported when I'm writing fiction. And I really do believe that fiction is my vocation, that it's the reason I'm here, that I'm here because my ancestors want me to tell stories. And so I've always been a person who watched the world very carefully. I am as fascinated by, for example, being at an airport, watching people saying goodbye, watching and noting the particular slump in the shoulders of a man who's just said goodbye to the family he loves. I am as interested in little details like that as I am in the larger details, in how political forces shape our lives. So fiction is the thing that I love. But what happened was that having published fiction and having been given a voice and a platform, I realized that I could also talk about the other things that I care about. I've always been politically engaged. I've always been very much aware of how politics isn't just about policy. It's also about people. It's about people's lives, about emotions, about the way injustice affects us. And so I started to talk about feminism, because I think that feminism is a fundamental issue of human rights. And because I feel very strongly about how important it is that we try to take away the negative stereotypes attached to feminism. And so I dream of a world in which we all collectively start to deconstruct masculinity. I dream of a world in which we tell little boys that it's okay to cry, that they should cry, that vulnerability is a wonderful thing, that we give little boys the language to talk about emotions. I dream of a world in which women are no longer perceived to be a species of angels, and I'll tell you what I mean. I think often that in the conversation about gender, there's the assumption that women are somehow morally better than men. And so, which is why there's actually a new series on Netflix called Killer Women, which I find ridiculous because there's, in some ways it's making a fetish of the idea of evil manifesting itself in the female form. It shouldn't be, it's normal. Female evil should be just as normal as male evil. We shouldn't have higher standards for women. We shouldn't assume that because a person is born a woman, that person somehow is just one step lower than angel. I find it quite dehumanizing for women, because what it means is that women cannot be judged on the same terms as men. I remember once a politician in Nigeria who was a woman had stolen money, which is an exercise that most Nigerian politicians are very adept at. And she was pilloried. And I remember a journalist saying, and she's a woman. And somehow the assumption was it would be better if she were a man, because then, we wouldn't judge her so harshly, because, we expect men to steal. And so I think that the idea of women being a species, another species of angels, is bad for both women and for men, because what it does is that it makes the standards uneven. So I dream of a world in which women are seen as human, a world in which women are allowed to be many things, a world in which women can be something and another thing, rather than something or another thing. And I thought I would finally read a short excerpt from Diezani. Diezani is my most recent book, and it's a long letter that I wrote to a friend of mine who had a child, and she asked me how to raise her child a feminist. And this, of course, is what happens when you've become this strange thing called a feminist icon. And of course, when she asked me, I said, how the hell would I know how you raise your child? But I thought about it, and I started to write to her. And I realized that apart from my slightly unhealthy pleasure in giving people advice, I also thought that it would be a way for me to map out my own feminist thinking. And in some ways, to map out what I like to think of as a framework of the world that I dream about. And so there are a number of suggestions. The last one, the 15th suggestion, I like to think embodies really my worldview. And so I'd like to read that. The child's name is Chizalum. Teach Chizalum about difference. Make difference ordinary. Make difference normal. Teach her not to attach value to difference. And the reason for this is not to be fair or to be nice, but merely to be human and to be practical. Because difference is the reality of our world. And by teaching her about difference, you are equipping her to survive in a diverse world. She must know and understand that people walk different paths in the world, and that as long as those paths do no harm to others, they are valid paths that she must respect. Teach her that we do not know, we cannot know everything about life. Both religion and science have spaces for the things we do not know, and it is enough to make peace with that. Teach her never to universalize her own standards or experiences. Teach her that her standards are for her alone and not for other people. This is the only necessary form of humility, the realization that difference is normal. Tell her that some people are gay and some are not. A little child has two daddies or two mommies because some people just do. Tell her that some people go to mosque and others go to church and others go to different places of worship and still others don't worship at all, because that is just the way it is. So you say to her, you like palm oil, but some people don't like palm oil. And she says to you, why, mommy? And you say to her, it's just the way the world is. Some people like palm oil and some people don't. Please note that I am not suggesting that you raise her to be non-judgmental, which is a commonly used expression these days, and which slightly worries me. The general sentiment behind the idea is a fine one, but non-judgmental can easily devolve into meaning don't have an opinion about anything. And so instead of that, what I hope for Chizalum is this, that she will be full of opinions, and that her opinions will come from an informed, humane, and broad-minded place. May she be healthy and happy. May her life be whatever she wants it to be. Do you have a headache after reading all this? Sorry, next time, don't ask me how to raise your daughter a feminist. And I'll end here. Thank you.